time for us sports fans. So we're just here to kind of talk some sports and update what's going on with the coronavirus and everything getting kind of put on the back burner until this gets figured out. So yeah, man, let's just talk. Let's just have a little discussion on current events and sports and what's going on in the world, etc. So how you guys doing out there today?
I'm good, man.
I'm good, but other than the little cough, I'm okay.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, sad times for us sports fans, especially for us that do this absolutely full time. So it's like now I woke up this morning like, well, what am I going to do today? Because I have absolutely no sports. And I was even ready last night to start learning some NHL. I know nothing about NHL, but I was like, hey, at least we got some NHL up. I'm going to figure out how to play that. And now that's gone. College basketball has been suspended. All we got is NASCAR and we got PGA. Hopefully that those don't get suspended. So yeah, man. So what you guys up to today?
So let me give you guys the update. So this is what we know for sure, right? So the AP last night, Rudy Gobert wasn't even in the arena. He contracted coronavirus. Looks like a fool because he went and played the coronavirus trick and touched everything in his last press conference. Then this morning it comes out Donovan Mitchell is now also positive. What Wojciechowski from ESPN is reporting is that Donovan Mitchell is infuriated because of how cavalier Rudy Gobert was about it, and he's contracted other people on his team. We're going to hear more about NBA players who have coronavirus because of who they played over the last 10 days and the symptoms that it takes up to 10 days for symptoms to show. So the NBA is canceled. The APT tennis tour went next. They suspended their season for 6 weeks. Then it just became an all-out brawl with who was going to be first or next to report. I've never seen in my life, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I guarantee you ESPN will do a 30-30 on this about the St. John's Creighton game. They canceled the Big Ten tournament and the Big East tournament. Uh-huh. That game was at halftime when they canceled it. So as of right now, there is no NCAA conference tournaments. They're expecting to announce that the NCAA tournament will be suspended. The NFL has suspended all activities at all its facilities indefinitely. Major League Baseball has suspended spring training indefinitely. The only sports that are left out there, NASCAR is going to race, and Tyler will talk about that. NASCAR is going to race the next 2 weekends. The PGA Tour has canceled next week's Punta Cana event. It's an alternative event to the WGC. That was not canceled for any other reason than because of the travel restrictions there are right now. The PGA Tour just canceled the event. The WGC is the big PGA Tour event next weekend. That is going to play. TPC Sawgrass, the Players' Championship, is going on as we speak. Fans who are there now and fans who are coming there today will be allowed to watch the event. There will be no fans for the rest of the weekend as they will finish the tournament and plan to play next week's WGC event. So that leaves us 2 sports. NASCAR plans a race this weekend empty. Tyler was just talking about before we came on that Atlanta's getting kind of hosed here because of their event. I'll let him talk about that. And NASCAR does plan to race next weekend in Miami with no fans present. So NHL's gone, MLB's gone, everything's gone. But we've got NASCAR, we've got PGA, and we are going to make free PGA and NASCAR on our website for anybody who wants to come and try those out and keep playing fantasy sports for NASCAR and for PGA. We've got really good content. Tyler, we can break down what Tyler does, but Tyler's unbelievable with what he provides and what his experience is. And we've got it in our optimizer so you can use that as well and a bunch of tools to go with it. PGA, the same thing. We're just trying to keep, be a place right now where everybody can come and talk sports. When there's crazy times in the country, the one thing everybody wants to be able to do is turn on sports and get away from it. So hopefully we can do that and still keep talking about sports. The hope is that while this virus is crazy right now, we want everybody to be safe and not be affected in a negative way by it. That sports will come back, that maybe, in a month or so, the NBA will resume its season. I've heard this morning that they're actively talking about playing 7 games when it resumes to get everybody back in the scheme of things. The NBA has told their teams they can continue to practice and then starting their postseason. So we'll wait for updates like that from other sports. But, as of right now, that's where everything's at.
Yeah, for sure. So, Tyler, if you don't mind, if you kind of just talk a little bit about NASCAR this weekend and kind of, what's going on with NASCAR and the coronavirus. Do you think that that'll continue to go, or do you think that'll end up getting suspended as well?
Well, I think it's interesting because, as of right now, the NASCAR weekend in Atlanta. It was a little bit up in the air, but NASCAR came out at about 1:30 p.m. Eastern this afternoon and said that they're going to continue with Atlanta and with Homestead the next 2 weeks and race without any fans in attendance. Now, even without fans, NASCAR races take hundreds of people. You're talking about teams, pit crews, track personnel, emergency workers, the media, which a little bit of that is up in the air because there's a large contingent of media that follow the race. I don't know if it's just going to be the broadcast personnel to get the races on TV and radio or how they will approach that. But Atlanta this weekend is going to be a fun race. I mean, it's a track NASCAR only goes to once a year. It's a 1.5 mile, worn-out racetrack, a lot of sliding. It makes for really good races. And Saturday's a good race. We've been doing a lot in Discord with the trucks and Xfinity. And Saturday is a truck Xfinity doubleheader, which is going to be a lot of fun. There's the whole Kyle Busch bounty going on. Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott are in the truck race. You'll see the Xfinity guys race later in the afternoon on Saturday. So all of that stuff is going to go on as planned. Homestead, Miami next week will go on as planned, and that's a new race date for them with a March race. Usually Homestead had ended the season each year. It was the championship weekend. So as of right now, it's all going to race. It's just without any fans in the stands, it might be kind of weird.
Well, I mean, the positive for that is TV ratings should go up a little bit.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. TV ratings, a guy like me who doesn't do nothing with NASCAR, maybe I'll have to check it out just because I got nothing else to kind of watch. So definitely, and we got to keep chugging along. Chris, what's your thoughts, man? What's your thoughts on no NHL?
Well, thanks for having me here today. My initial thought last night when I was, formulating a plan of attack for NHL was it was always in the back of my mind that I knew that this was going to happen. But as a DFS player, DFS writer, I knew that the show had to go on as far as, writing an article or getting some content, out there. Jeremy touched on it in his opening that of all the times in my entire days of being alive on this earth, in times of like panic and when things seem grim, people always turn to sports, right? In any circumstance. But the constant that has been taken away from us now, everything's been canceled, put on the back burner. So what do people do now? I think not to sound rude or crass, but in a good way, I think it's going to turn people away from being on their phones constantly, that constant social media interaction. Maybe people might be with their families more, read a book. I don't know. We've never been put in this position before, really, in all the times in my lifetime, and I'm only 35 years old. So so that was my first thought. My second thought was, well, there's no way they cancel NHL because those guys are cut from a different cloth. They get hit in the puck. They get hit in the puck with a face, lose 10 teeth, get 15 stitches on their forehead. Boom, get me back in and play. So I figured there's no way they're going to cancel, hockey based on a virus somewhat like the flu. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know the specifics of the coronavirus, but I know it is nasty enough where they've started to, close things down, places where a lot of people gather. That's not happening anymore. On my way, my morning trip to the grocery store and a Starbucks, I see you drinking one, Jeremy. The Starbucks was closed because all the staff had walked out. They didn't want to be there. They thought, there's constantly 10, 15 cars in the drive-thru. We don't know who's sick, who's not. We don't want to be here. So we walked off. And I know I joined this conversation before we went live a little bit late, but I heard you guys, talking about what do the hourly, employees do now, they get paid per hour. They get paid to be there, to punch in and be there. So there's a lot left to discuss, a lot left to get into. And as it stands right now, I don't know where we stand, if that makes sense. I mean, in some ways, not to be long-winded, but in some ways we do know where we stand with sports, but what about real life and our daily jobs and our daily interactions with people? I don't know where that stands, so I'm happy to be here and chat with you guys and take it all in, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they, things that are definitely getting real when you got, NBA, you got all these leagues that are suspending all these sports. They're going to lose billions of dollars.
That's
the fact that they're taking the stand and they're willing to lose that money for the safety of others. I think that's saying something big time. It's coming as far as I coach high school basketball. All the sports as of this morning have currently been canceled until further notice. I just got an email from my kids' school. All the kids may be out of school for a while. Like things are really getting real. Like people always talk about what was it called? Remember, like they were talking about we're going to go to year 2000. They're like, oh, it's going to be the end of the world. People started stocking
Y2K.
up. Yeah, remember that? Yeah, and
Y2K.
And nothing ever happened. Like it was fine. Like this is the closest thing to wow, something crazy is really happening. You go to Walmart, you go to Target. They're limited on toilet paper. Costco's only allowing you to get 2 cases of water at a time. Like things getting really bad. I had my lady in my ear last night. Hey man, I think we should start stocking up on some canned foods because you never know what's going to happen. So hey, it's really crazy right now, and it's not like it's just the United States; it's the whole entire world. And so I think that before things get better, things are definitely going to get worse.
That's it.
The scariest part about it, but hopefully, we can get. Jeremy's saying that give it about 3 weeks and a month that things will kind of get back to normal and stuff like that. Hopefully, 3 weeks is not really that long compared to for something like this. If we can, figure this out in 3 weeks and a month, we'll be okay. But if this lingers on for 6 months, 8 months, a year, more and more people are going to get infected, and things are definitely just going to get worse and worse. And you talked about it, with people not being at work, with extra time on their hands, that's going to cause the crime rate to go up as well. It's inevitable. I mean, it is what it is. People are just going to be at home, not doing nothing. You can barely go buy toilet paper and water and food for your family. Things could get bad. So definitely, hopefully, we resolve this sooner.
I think that may be the point that's lost in all of this, is that I know listening to the NCAA and listening to the conference commissioners talk about the reasons they were suspending their tournaments. And Jay Billis, who I have a lot of respect for, I think Jay Billis is one of the smartest guys in sports. Jay Billis's point was, this is not to invoke panic or overreact. It's to be a part of flatlining this so that we get ahead of a spike. And I think that's the point that gets lost in all of it, is that's why these leagues are doing it. They're not doing it to make everybody panic and like they're seriously worried or they've got a ton of players that are infected with it. They're doing it so that people don't all, I get for lack of a better term, corral in one spot and get a spike of a bunch of outbreaks of it. We haven't, and the craziest thing about it is we don't really have any idea what it is. And I think anytime that you have the uncertainty and the unknown, that's the scariest part. You could look at it from any standpoint. Whenever people don't know what's going to happen, that's when people tend to freak out. And I think that's what is also lost in this. We always say, we say this all the time. If the number one thing that will kill you in any situation is panic, because what people do when they panic is they typically freeze. And when you stop moving is typically when you're impacted the most. So that's kind of why we want to keep, going live and doing shows and talking about sports, because we want to be able to keep moving forward and not just put a pause on everything. The world's going to keep turning, right? And we hope everybody stays safe. And if we could go on and we could talk sports, there's still, PGA going on. There's still NASCAR going to happen. And hopefully people do turn to these two sports as they're going on right now and get a break from the panic that's going on out there right now. I think that's the number one thing that I would like people to know, is that typically what's supposed to happen is going to happen, and you just got to work your way through it. Panic is one of the worst things you can do. Take a pause, figure out what the next step is, and then continue to move forward.
And make sure you wash your hands.
Yes. Make sure you wash your hands. Do your part and wash your hands.
Hand sanitizer in your back pocket.
If I may add something real quick, there's been times in my daily fantasy sports career or life where, I go through waves and lulls where I'll, just concentrate on NHL or just concentrate on baseball. And this is a daily fantasy sports website, but we're men with families. We care about each other. We care about the the fans who read this stuff. And if I may give a little like advice here. Now, I know that baseball spring training is suspended, but we also have a lot of baseball content. The optimizer for the season is here. I've used daily fantasy sports projections when I would do my seasonal long drafts, if that makes sense, because although this is a daily fantasy sports site, I'm still a huge fan of seasonal, like dynasty baseball, fantasy hockey, seasonal stuff. So you can use this is just my opinion, my process. I've used daily fantasy sports projections in an optimizer when trying to choose between two guys in, let's say, a seasonal baseball draft. So just because baseball and hockey aren't playing right now, there's still seasonal stuff going on. There's still waiver wires to be had. So if I may say so, hopefully this doesn't come out wrong, but you can still use the optimizers and cheat sheets projections for seasonal stuff. That's how I've always looked at it. In a way, I've always felt like it was I was able to maybe get a leg up because some of these other sites, these big time sites, their projections and whatnot, they're very skewed. But when you look at DFS content and optimizers, that stuff is dialed in to the T for that day or for that week in leagues that lock weekly. So don't be afraid to get away from getting into our newly up and running NHL optimizer, our baseball DFS stuff. It can really help you. And if you're like me, you've seen my notebooks. It looks like a serial killer's note. I just take constant, impeccable notes. That's okay to do. So I don't want you guys to get away from not looking into our DFS optimizers and using that to your advantage for your seasonal stuff.
The first thing that comes to mind, Chris, when you talk about that, and it's a really good point, is for pitching, especially in leagues where in leagues where you can drop pitchers on a daily basis and you don't keep them on your roster, you constantly are dropping and picking up pitchers. It's a great way to look at who to pick up, like which pitchers today are projected to have the most. We also have tools as far as MLB goes that projects, a lot of different analytical categories. So, when it comes to pitching. So that's really a really good point.
Absolutely. And in a way, I felt there was times where I felt like I was like ahead of the curve, or like I was more advanced than others when I was able to use, like you said, the daily pitcher projections on a DFS site for making daily transactions in a seasonal league. So the content is still there. Just because these people aren't playing doesn't mean that the content just up and vanishes, So there's still a lot to be done. Like you said, I know that the coronavirus and getting sick and our family and friends takes precedence, but there still has to be an outlet in a way. You know what I mean? So, and what's the worst that could happen if you just want to sit at home on your phone or on the computer and just start writing some stats or some notes on next week or next month? Because I know a lot of seasonal baseball drafts are upon us. And just because that stuff is suspended, like you said, Jeremy, in the opening, the world is still going to turn. And if you're like me, I'm just a sucker for content. I'm on a constant quest for content.
I think on a personal note, one of the greatest things about being an American and living in this country is we have an unbelievable attitude as far as being able to balance two very important things, in my opinion: having courtesy and showing respect to those who are impacted by bad situations, and still being able to put one foot in front of the other and not let bad situations paralyze us. And I think that's what, that's all we're really talking about, right? Is that, nobody's ever seen anything like this before. There's never been a time where there hasn't been sports going on or this many leagues have canceled something. And it's not for any other reason than, hey, look, there's a real deal scare out there with a virus that a lot of people don't really know anything about. What do I do? First, get informed. That's number one. Then number two, after you're informed, don't panic, put one foot in front of the other, and hopefully we can be a small part of that process. I'm going to just ask Tyler a couple of questions really quick about this weekend's race. We have had, last weekend was a little bit different than the previous. Is this race 5? This is race 4 or 5?
We had Daytona, Vegas, Auto Club, and Phoenix. So
this will be
number 5. Yeah.
And so last weekend was the first weekend we didn't have to deal with weather. It was just a nice weekend.
Yeah.
There is rain that is projected in the forecast for tomorrow and Saturday, and then Sunday looks like it's cloudy with a chance of a shower. What are you seeing there? How much do you think that impacts things? Hopefully, God will come down and say, hey, look, there's no sports for anybody in this country. Let's just part the clouds and have a sunny day so people can take in 3 hours of a day and watch a race.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's only a couple of tracks throughout the season that's 500-mile races for the Cup Series on an intermediate track, and this is one of them. So what that means basically is NASCAR, for those who don't know or follow up, it's kind of like a baseball rule for rainouts. If you get your fifth inning in or whatever in baseball, it's a complete game. With NASCAR, it's either half the race or the end of the second stage, whichever comes first, and then it's a complete race. So if it were to rain, you could have a surprise winner. Sometimes, we saw that last year in the July Daytona race where Justin Haley won the race and we got killed that day. Like everyone we had, finished in the 30s because they all pitted and a couple guys stayed out and won the race.
You have to give him credit for staying out, though. You got to give him credit. It was a smart move. It was a chess game move, but it was like, oh my God.
He had nothing to lose. His car wasn't going to pass anybody. But so, you can look at that.
And I think that from a DFS standpoint, put a little strategy out there where we've seen at Daytona this year where people actually built lineups with just the back of the freaking pack, right? Like they just put the back of the pack in the lineup and left all the money in the world on the table.
Especially in the Busch Clash, which that worked out quite well. But for Atlanta, you're still going to have cars running up front. It'll depend a lot on when rain comes, if rain comes. For me, it makes it more unpredictable. So then I like to just maybe fade a little bit more and not play as much if it really looks like it's going to rain Sunday morning and they're going to start the race. The best case scenario is if it rains before halfway, and then everything stops, everything pauses, and then they'll finish the race on Monday or whenever they can to run the full length. Then it's not that much of an issue. So I don't get too worked up about weather, but if it looks like it's going to be a big deal, then you just have to kind of adjust accordingly. Know that if the race gets called at a random spot, you could have a random winner.
Could have a random winner. We've seen it before. Like you mentioned, we saw it last year. That was one of the craziest things in the world. I mean, the guy made a great decision. He made a team decision. It was strategic. Everybody went in and pitted, and he stayed out, and that was it. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the race this weekend. You said there's very few that are 500 miles. This is one of them. Yeah. What are some in the past? Who's had a lot of success there in the last few years? Is this Kyle Busch and Toyota have been really popular and had a really good year last year, but they have struggled a bit this year. But Kyle Busch did have a good finish last weekend, but he's not gotten all the way up there in that winner's circle yet. Is this a spot? Have they done well there in the past? Talk about a little bit like that. What's going on with that? Your opinion on that?
Yeah, so not so much as far as the wins go, right? So Brad Keselowski won this race last year. He edged out Martin Truex Jr. When I think of Atlanta, I think of Kevin Harvick. This is a Kevin Harvick track where he runs right along the bottom. You'll see cars run from the bottom of the track all the way up right against the wall. Kyle Larson led over 100 laps last spring, running right up against the wall and then didn't get the finish he wanted. But Kevin Harvick seems to hook the bottom, run really fast. And it's an old, worn-out racetrack. Atlanta used to – they said a few years ago they were going to repave it, and then they had to repave. There's no way you can repave this racetrack. So they held off on it. It hasn't been paved in years, decades maybe. But Kevin Harvick, Jimmy Johnson won 2 in a row going back 3 and 4 years ago. Kevin Harvick won 2 years ago. Brad Keselowski last year. So there isn't really a one-car dominant – guy to win, but to me, I always think Kevin Harvick when we go to Atlanta.
What did Joey Logano call that stuff last weekend they put on the race?
Awesome sauce.
Awesome sauce. So with that being said, and talking about it being paved and not being paved, is this a situation where they put more awesome sauce on the track?
I don't think so. I do not think that they put the traction compound on Atlanta. I have not read anything that says that they will, and I don't think they did last year.
So just so you guys know, Tyler produces 3 different content pieces every single week. The first piece is called The Setup, and that pretty much breaks down the entirety of what's going on in that week's race, where it's at. It's kind of a who, what, when, where, and why, right? And then breaks down the odds, the driver history, etc. You produce a podcast where you go further in depth and give some strategy and kind of lead on to who your picks are going to be, and then you do the victory lane piece, which is built like our core plays pieces are, where this is the core of drivers that we're recommending for the week that you can then take over to the optimizer, plug those in, and build your lineups around.
And the other thing, if I can, just one plug for the setup, because I am in the middle of writing it. I was going to wait until I was sure they were racing this weekend before I finished writing it all up. But one thing that I do in the setup that I think is important, because NASCAR is weekly and you have a lot to learn every week, you can look back and see what you did last week, is to review, right? To say, hey, what were we right on? What were we wrong on? And more importantly, why were we wrong? Last weekend, I was very wrong, right? I played Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon in the same lineup in DraftKings and FanDuel, and it failed miserably. But it almost was really successful, right? Like, you had Tyler Reddick running top 3 in the middle of that race, and then he pounds the wall, ends his day, and you're pretty much out of cash everywhere. But, you have to look at the why. I like recapping. You want to leave every race and say, what did I learn? And have a line and say, okay, this is what I learned. This is where we're at, and let's move forward. A couple of weeks ago, we really screwed up by not playing any Gibbs drivers. When Denny Hamlin just should have been an obvious play at Auto Club. I didn't play him, and that was a huge mistake. So there's things you got to learn, and I like doing some of that review, look back, and then move forward as you get ready for the next race.
If I may say something real quick, so not a big NASCAR.
You guys don't have to say "if I may," man. We're going. We got nowhere to go.
Well, shut up for a minute because I want something I want to say. So I'm not a big NASCAR guy, but I will play this weekend. I'll read the article. I'm very intrigued by it, and it sparked a thought of mine. For those of you that might be apprehensive to play NASCAR, if you don't know what you're doing or how to make a line, trust the article, trust this content, because when during the NBA All-Star break, everybody flocked to NHL, right? So if I'm not mistaken, I told people, get into NHL, read our content. It'll give you an advantage because, like this weekend, NASCAR is going to be so watered down, right? From people that are just don't know what they're doing, but they just want their DFS fix. And so there's going to be a lot of wasted money, wasted entries, if that makes sense. So if you read his content and use our articles, you're going to have a clear advantage. So there's a lot of money to be made this weekend on NASCAR with these people that just want to play. You know what I mean? So there's going to be
I'll tell you one thing, Chris. You and I have talked about it until today. Now that we don't have NHL, the best sport for cash games in DFS was hockey, period. It was because of the fact that hockey is so much like baseball, and the fact that the main difference is that in baseball, you're not rostering people that are third on a depth chart. They don't carry that many people in baseball. You've got 27 guys in your roster, and usually 12 of them are pitchers. So you've got 13 position players, right? You're not rostering, I'm struggling for a name right now that's a bench player, but I mean, you're not rostering a bench player. I'll give you one because I'm a Giants fan. I'll plug in. You're not rostering Gregor Blanco every night hoping he gets a pitch hit double. You're not doing that. But you are with hockey. You're rostering guys on second and third lines, and if the research or the person writing the article is thorough and good enough, like Chris is, you're getting the power play unit they're on. And if you don't watch hockey, right, and I'm just using this as an example. I know we've lost it for a while, but if you don't watch hockey, you don't know that when you scroll through FanDuel or DraftKings and it says PL3 and you avoid that player, if you don't have somebody who keeps you informed or you don't have a research process, you don't know that he might be PL3, but he's power play unit 1, right? So the opportunity for him to get an assist or a goal on that first power play unit is huge. It's the same thing with every sport. I agree with you this weekend with NASCAR. You're going to have a bunch of people who are going to flock to NASCAR. I would also think that you're going to have people flock to the weekend-only PGA contest that will kick off tomorrow night, right? Well, they should be open now, but after the cut, if you don't know, FanDuel, at least, I'm not sure if DraftKings does, offers weekend PGA contests. So after the cut, you're able to select a team of golfers that have already made the cut, and it's only predicated on the weekend scores. It allows for a lot of ebb and flow, if you will, because there's a lot of guys like Hideki Matsui, who I believe is 7 under and done today. He went out and just blew up the first round. he may not go 7 under again, but there may be somebody from the back of the pack that makes the cut that does go 7 under, and he would be a better play than Matsui was. So I'm kind of rambling to agree with your point, but people are going to flock to sports, and they're not going to be that informed with them. They're just going to play them because they want to play DFS. And if you know a place like what I'm going to plug ours all day long because I believe in the guys we have, and I believe we've got some of the best guys that there is in the industry to break this stuff down. If you're not getting the advantage, you are putting in and having a chance to just burn money.
That's it.
For sure. Hey, so I'm gonna end with this. It's gonna be the ultimate question that we've been having the last couple of days. It's like, hey, you talk about NASCAR, you talk about PGA. People, are not too informed on these sports. But hey, why even try to do all the research when you can just buy the cheat sheet? I mean, it's simple as that. Come check out the site, DFSCheatSheet.com. Thank you guys very much for jumping on here with us and just talking sports and what's going on in the world right now. Definitely would like to do this again tomorrow or the next couple of days. And hey, man, you guys enjoy the rest of your guys' day, all right? Peace out.